Hello, everyone. Welcome to the next episode of Avid Inside Track. This is us, Meet the Editors. My name is Robert Rodriguez. I'm part of Avid based out in Los Angeles. And I have the pleasure of welcoming here the team of 3 editors of the hit show This Is Us. I'd like to bring everyone live on camera here. Maybe take a quick moment to introduce each one of them. There's everyone. So This Is Us was definitely one of my all-time favorite shows, and we've had a bit of a time talking before we went live here about all the fans, worldwide exposure that this has. And I know that the 3 of you were responsible for making us all laugh, cry, probably more often than I care to admit on some of the episodes, and then hug our loved ones just a little bit tighter every week. But I know that I think I know the order of who's been on the show longest, but I want to give you each a moment to introduce yourselves and talk a little bit about this before we kick off the conversation. Julia, can we start off with you?
Hi, everyone. I'm Julia Grove. Yes, I've been editing on This Is Us since the first season. So my first episode was 103, Kyle, I believe it was called.
And then I think after that we had Lyson that came on, right?
Aaron was actually on before me, but my name is Lyson Ho. I started as an assistant editor in season 2, midway through the season, and I assistant edited season 3, and then in season 4 I got bumped up to editor and worked on the show for the rest of the series.
Yep. And then Aaron.
Hi, I'm Erin Nicole Wyatt, and I started in season 2. I was also an assistant editor, so I was there for seasons 2 and 3, assisting Howard Leader, and I left for season 4 to edit on another show, and then had the opportunity to come back for seasons 5 and 6 as an editor.
Very cool. Yeah, I'm glad I avoided the trying to do the big 3 tie-in with first came Julia and Dan said.
I remember that.
Yeah. Yep. Too many memories of the show. For the audience, and I'd love to hear that some of you started off as assistants and moved on to editor. And I'd like to hear a little bit about each of your responsibilities with the show, what sort of the day-to-day tasks were from start to finish, if you can give us a brief outline of the day. And I'll let whoever wants to go first to start off.
I mean, as an assistant editor, dailies were part of the process. So dailies, when we're shooting, the assistant editor is responsible for dailies, making sure the script binder is updated for their editor, doing any sound work, temp visual effects, maintaining lists of visual effects and ADR, and just kind of being the right-hand person for the editor, and also communicating with your post team.
I was just going to add, we also handle all the liaising with the different post houses that handle the finishing process, like the sound house and, onlining. We send out cuts to all those people at the end to make the show into the final product.
So then on the editing process, it really is for the assistant and for the editors, you're on from day one, from the initial principal photography all the way until it's aired, right? So,
Yeah, that's correct. We, usually get about a day of prep to come on, maybe the first day of shooting, and then the next day you start getting dailies. And they shot on our show, I think by the end they were shooting about 10 days an episode. Sometimes pickups here and there. Season 5, skipping ahead, season 5 was our first pandemic season, and that was very tight. We didn't have to shut down too much, but there were a couple times that, because they did have to stop down because of a case or two, we were locking very close to air, so that was a little stressful. But and we can talk more about that, but that was, I'd say we're always like a tight-knit community, but those last 2 seasons working from home, our entire edit team worked from home the last 2 seasons, and we really kind of coalesced even more, which is ironic being apart. But yeah, it was a group effort to get that on the air.
Oh, that's awesome. So you're saying that when you actually had to go remote, that actually brought you guys tighter as a team collaborating?
Yeah, I mean, definitely season 5, the schedules were so tight because we didn't resume, everyone was just stopped down. The whole world stopped, but we resumed shooting, I think, the end of September. And the first 2 episodes, they were a 2-parter, premiered end of October, I think. So it was the only way to get that on air was to we all tag teamed. I think Aaron, Lyson, and Howard and myself, we co-edited the 2-parter. And so every day, we used a lot of remote software like Slack and Trello to kind of share responsibilities. Okay, who's cutting which scene? And we just got it done. But yeah, it was definitely a group effort.
No, that's great. And then with the 10-day shoot, from start to finish, how much time do each of you have in the edit bay to produce the different cuts to delivery?
Let's see, I think, be in that season, because we didn't have that much time, we were cutting on the fly. We were even sending cuts to Dan Fogelman to get notes back.
Scene by scene, as they were cut, they were just going out.
So we were kind of in this weird zone of producers cut and editors cut at the same time, so that by the time we had the complete show, everything shot, he had seen most of it. So that was probably only a couple days after they shot everything till we, had a complete episode. And but usually you get about 4 days, I'd say, after after principal photography ends on an episode to another thing that's unique about This Is Us is we worked really closely with the composer, Sid Khosla, who is a college roommate of Dan Fogelman, the creator. So, and I think that's no surprise because everyone speaks to the score being so kind of baked into the mood and tone of the show. So by the time our editor's cut was out, we did usually have a pretty good working theme with each episode, and each episode had its own score pretty much. I mean, sometimes he'd riff on previous scores. We had a Jack theme, what would Jack do theme, and various themes like that, but he would generally tailor his score to each episode. So it was like working on a mini film each time, 18 episodes a season. So
Right. Now it did show that it was one of those things that was very well planned out and thought out. And you're talking about the themes that each show had in a season as a whole, how they all tied together. Being that this was a sometimes period piece, flashbacks, flash forwards, present time. Can you talk a little bit about how you worked together to make sure that was cohesive throughout all the different episodes? I know that all 3 of you probably had to keep in touch to make sure that whatever's cut from one goes to the other, because the way that they're intercut with even different episodes. So Aaron, do you want to tell us a little bit about that, or Lyson?
I think that came most into play in our trilogy episodes in season 6, just because they share the timeline and they were just different POVs. So I know for those 3 specifically, I was constantly talking to Lyson. It was like, well, I changed Randall's line here, so we need to change it here, which you kind of hear in the background of my episode, which was the Kevin episode. So there was constant contact, and also having Julia on since season 1. She knew the episodes really well. Both Lyson and I knew from season 2 on, our episodes that we worked on very well. So if ever there were anything that one of us needed, someone would get on Slack and be like, hey, does anybody have Jack doing this or Rebecca doing this, and kind of work together to find that footage.
Yeah, and outside of the trilogy episodes, just kind of in even in normal episodes, moving from time period to time period, we always were working really carefully on transitions and trying to make sure that it was clear where we were at each time without dumbing it down too much for the audience. In the pilot, you obviously didn't want the audience to know where and when you were in time. And so in future episodes, we didn't need to do titles or anything like that. It's all sort of said with the production design and the wardrobe and hair. And one visual conceit that was established early that we would use a lot is kind of going from the same character in one time period to that character in another time period in a close-up or something. So there's a very clear visual connection there. And music, like Julia was saying, was also, I think, a huge part of making an episode feel cohesive, even when you're in a lot of different places. Our composer, Sid, would kind of latch on to a theme that could carry through, and you sort of are feeling that through line throughout the episode, which makes it feel a lot more of a piece.
Yeah, it was, everything always flowed great. And I think the music, and as well as the just the look of the different locations, with you have a fantastic DP on this with Yasu Tanida, that you know, it was always really interesting to see that you could just go from one spot to another, and some of the tricks that you're talking about you're using to take you from there. It was always impressive to see how you kept that together.
Yeah, I'd have to say, just having worked on other shows where you kind of bend over backwards editorially to establish a transition, going forward in time or back. When I came onto this show, it was so refreshing to just be able to make a cut and exactly where you are. And so, not to undersell our work, I think what Lysan said, the genius of just the subtle facial hair, wigs, you knew exactly where you were, and the way it was shot and the score. So it was it made our job easy, and we could actually then play. And I'd say the writing was, it was all kind of there on the page too. I mean, but in editorial, we definitely played around with moving things around to make sure it was like the most cohesive. So but we had a great kind of clay to work with.
Right.
Yeah, like the scripts were always so beautifully written, and they were usually centered around a theme of some kind. And it was fun to be able to watch it and then see, where can I intercut these two scenes to make the theme shine through even more. And Dan was always looking for those opportunities. And I think as I worked on the show more and more, I started to spot them myself too.
No, it's great. And I think because this is inside track, and a lot of people here are looking at either, starting off in their careers or where to go in their careers. One thing too, you mentioned a fourth editor on this, but curious to know, between the different episodes of a series, how do each of you select what you're going to work on? Is it just based on schedule? Is it rock, paper, scissors for, who gets what? How do you each decide what you're working on?
Well, generally, you're just on every 3 episode rotation. So everyone kind of knows their number coming in, but the last 2 seasons were definitely kind of throw the sticks up in the air and see how we can get it on the air. So, and then we did have, Aaron came on as a 4th editor in season 5. And then we had, gosh, sorry, my brain is rattled. We had 4 editors season 6 as well, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So then it was kind of just scheduling, I think, how we can fit everyone in. I was on maternity leave for most of season 6, so I came in and just did 2 episodes at the end of season 6.
And then season 5, I was more of a swing editor, just to kind of help everybody out, because I was already familiar with the show. Because of tight deadlines, it was helpful to have a 4th person in there to cut scenes and take on whatever would be helpful to everybody else, which I was grateful for.
And Aaron, the way that you sort of progressed on here, because when you came on board as an assistant and moved up into editor, can you talk a little bit about your career path? How did you get started in this? I think that's always something interesting that people want to know.
I'm one of the really odd people that always knew they wanted to be an editor. From 6th, 5th grade on, was taking VHS and recording on one and playing on the other to combine things. I forced all of my classmates to watch my school projects, which were just music video montages. So I knew that's what I wanted to do. I went to the University of New Orleans, which had a great film program, and thought that I was going to stay there 4 years and just come to LA and be an editor. But I ended up staying there, and I worked in local television for a while. And then I moved on and did online editing for a few years. And through that, I linked with some amazing editors from LA, Deborah Weinfeld being one, who was like, if you ever come to LA, I'll hire you. And sure enough, like the week I came to LA, she was getting a job on Covert Affairs and hired me. So that was my first assistant editing gig here, but it was definitely what I knew I always wanted to do. I didn't realize exactly what assisting was at that point, but I was going to do whatever it took to get to the editing chair.
That's great to hear. And yeah, Covert Affairs, I remember that. So you were responsible for the box sequences. Yeah. Lyson, do you want to talk a little bit about how you got into this in your career path?
Sure. Yeah, when I was in high school, I went to a school that had some vocational classes, and one of the ones they offered was TV production. And I didn't really have a strong interest in it at the time, but all my friends were doing it. I thought it sounded fun, so I took that class, and I ended up just falling in love with it and becoming so engrossed in the projects we were doing, and loving editing especially. I would always like almost miss the bus home because I was just in the edit suite, like working on something. But then when I went to college, I went to Tufts outside of Boston. I sort of felt, well, that was fun, but I don't know if it's a realistic career option because I'm from New Jersey. I didn't know anyone in the film industry or anything about LA. So I ended up majoring in international relations at Tufts, but I was very tempted by like an intro movie making course that I took my freshman year. So I decided to just take that class. And once I took that class, I was like, no, this is what I want to do. So I ended up minoring in film. And after I graduated, I, through one of my film professors, was able to get a job assistant editing on a documentary that was being produced locally in Boston. And then ended up assistant editing on a narrative feature. And I was sort of remotely assisting an editor out in LA who was Susan Vale. And she became a really amazing mentor to me, and kind of similar to Erin's situation. She said, you know, move out to LA, get in the union and stay in touch with me. And I'd love to work with you again someday. So I took her advice and came out here, and it took a little while. She didn't have a job for me immediately, but I did stay in touch with her, and she was eventually able to hire me as her assistant on a show called Grandfathered. And then I stayed with her for 4 years, assisting her, and we eventually ended up on This Is Us. And, you know, that was where my career really blossomed, and I learned so much from all the editors on the show. And in season 4, got the opportunity to start editing.
Yeah, it's a great story. We know Susan Vale really well. She's a good friend of the Avid family. Yeah. And Julia, can we talk about your path as well?
And Susan is an honorary, more than honorary editor on This Is Us, because she filled in for me on when I was on maternity leave the first time. So, and she actually, I owe her so much because she's the one who told me about this show, and I went and interviewed because she told me about it. So she's like, I really wish I could do it, but I'm committed to something else. We should go interview for it. And, you know, it changed my life. So I'm just always grateful that she's like in our orbit, and yeah, we love her. But yeah, I went to film school not too far away from Lyson at BU in Boston. And similar to Lyson, I mean, I feel like when I was spending like 6 to 8 hours in a basement and was fine with that, and not, you know, just like leaving when it was pitch black, I had a feeling that I could probably do this as a career. And yeah, and then I grew up in LA, so luckily I just moved home, lived at home for a while, saved some money. I kind of reached out through an alumni list of my college and worked on a short film, which kind of led me to a very small indie film, which then got me kind of a big break to just PA on Rocky Balboa. So that was just a big weird deal to work with Sylvester Stallone. I had never seen any of the Rocky movies when I started, which is embarrassing, but so that was bizarre. But then you know, talking to the apprentice on that show, I was like, oh, so how long were you a PA? And he was like, oh, many years, and then you get grandfathered in. And I was like, I kind of want to go the fast track and, you know, start assisting. And so I went into reality TV. I coordinated for one show. I didn't really care for that. I wanted to be on the Avid. And luckily, an editor on that show just knew that I wanted to edit. She saw me on the Avid doing like stock footage logs and took a real big chance on me. So she just hired me to be an associate editor on a show called 30 Days, which is the Morgan Spurlock docuseries. And so I did that. In between, I luckily got some like factory farm night assistant editing work in there. So I knew how to do output, string outs, all that stuff, digitizing, back when digitizing was a thing. And then from there, I just got my days in, and then I worked on The Bachelor, you know, did a lot of reality TV. And then you know, just got into the union and got a call from a friend and said, hey, someone needs an assistant on the new Shonda Rhimes show. And I did not watch Grey's Anatomy, so I didn't know too much about that. But I went and worked on a show called Off the Map, which was a 13-episode short-lived show. But at the end of that, I worked with the editor to do the Scandal pilot, and kind of that, you know, it was history from there. And I worked with this editor, Matt Ramsey, for about 5 seasons. Scandal, we did Private Practice, and then I did the How to Get Away with Murder pilot with him, and then he went back to Scandal. And you know, this is a great opportunity for assistants to really prove themselves, and if you work hard, you know, the showrunner was like, hey, do you want to edit when it goes to series? So I edited for a couple seasons on that, and then went to This Is Us. So yeah, I mean, having that kind of mentor, cheerleader, champion, someone to learn through osmosis, just watching how my editor like edited music and all that stuff, I think is so invaluable.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. And I get excited too when I hear all the different shows that I've actually worked on in the background before too. So we've worked together for many, many years indirectly, it sounds like.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think between Shonda Rhimes and Dan Fogelman, you're pretty set for whatever direction you want to go through. They're never going to stop working.
No.
You mentioned something that caught my attention as well with that you were on the Avid sort of cutting things, and the editor noticed this and brought you on. Opened up the question for all of you, but how important was knowing Avid Media Composer to get started in the career versus, you know, some of the other applications out there? I'm sure that's something that a lot of people that are just starting off, their number one question is, how do I get started in this industry? And even before I joined the company, my very first thing I'd say is, you've got to learn a media composer. But I'd love to hear it from those that do.
I guess I'll start real quick. You know, there's so many people that are in our industry that did not go to film school. I think sometimes it's their second career or third, or, you know, some people live some crazy lives. Like they're like, I was a spy in a previous life and now I'm in a, but so sure, you don't need to go to film school. Surely taking some Avid courses help. But what I found was once I did have the opportunity to get on Avid in a professional setting like that, the night assist work, it was so much easier to like, you know, I'm getting the tutorial from another more seasoned assistant, but I knew exactly where everything was. You just feel so much more comfortable. So I think it just kind of breaks that barrier down and, you know, allows you to actually focus on the more creative side of things.
Well, in my high school TV production class, we actually used Avid. So I had an early exposure to it and really loved it. Then in college, we were on Final Cut. So I sort of switched over, and most of my experience was in Final Cut, and I got very comfortable with that. But then once I moved to LA and was in touch with Susan, and when she had this opportunity for me to work with her on Grandfathered, she was like, you need to know Avid. So I took one of the Avid multi-day courses for assistant editors and just got kind of a crash course in how to do the basics of what you need to know as an assistant. And when I showed up for my first day, I had so much to learn still, but thankfully the other assistant editors were super helpful, and I could just run and ask, how do I do this? How do I do that? And I was able to, get caught up pretty quickly. And Avid seems to be where most of the work is. I think most of the TV and film jobs that I see are on Avid, so you definitely want to know it. And I love it. It'd be really hard to go back to anything else now, I think.
That's great. Erin?
I agree with my voice is going. I agree with what Lyson said, basically about having the hand, and Julia, about having an editor with you that you can watch do different things and kind of like taking what they're doing and applying it to your own work. But we had Avid in college. So I took 2 courses on Avid in college, and then used Final Cut 7. And then when I was working in Louisiana on independent features, they needed an assistant. I said, I know Avid, but I don't know how to assist. And again, this is where Deborah Weinfeld jumped in, and she's like, whatever you don't know, I'll teach you. So she literally taught me the basics of doing dailies, how to group clip, which was very generous as an editor. And the same with Howard too. If she linked me with afterwards, Howard Leader, I would just kind of watch him and how he quickly would just move and music edit and change things. And I just kind of sat with him and absorbed what he was doing on screen and tried to apply it in the future. So I feel like being hands-on and having access has been the best way to learn.
Yeah, and you all bring up something really important too that I think is great for our viewers to hear. The community here, it's like you don't really have to go into this and know every single thing, that it is a really strong community, that we all support each other, and no one turns you away, because at the end of the day, right, it's like if you turn someone away, you're really hurting yourself. And knowing that, and sort of the experience that you've all had learning as assistants and then getting into editors, how closely do you work with your assistants now?
I'll start because I'm still working with my assistant from This Is Us very closely. My assistant the last couple seasons on This Is Us, her name is Romina Ray, and she's co-edited, I believe, 4 episodes of This Is Us, I think. But just cutting scenes, I call her my taste maker too, because you just start getting mired in the footage and you've seen it a million times, and you're like, just tell me that this doesn't suck, or just, is this playing, is this too much? A lot of the the line we always walked on This Is Us is not getting into the kind of melodrama of it. It's obviously very emotional topics, and you don't need to push it really any further than what the actors are giving you. I mean, so just making sure we're not pushing too hard. So Romina was always my check, can you watch this? And she would always give me a very honest opinion. Yeah, I mean, prepping dailies and then doing sound work, but then also cutting scenes and laying in music and all of that.
Yep, that's great. And I know that she's watching now too, so shout out to your assistant. And for Lyson and Erin, I know that you're, I'm sure, working also with assistants now, and just curious to see, because you're so close to it, how you're working with them and how often you feel like you're just doing some of the assistant work still, because it's still just sort of hard to let go of some of those?
I also work very closely with my assistant, Stacy Pietrafita, and she was the first assistant that I hired when I got bumped up on This Is Us. And she had a lot of experience, which was really helpful for me, just to know that she could handle it and knew what she was doing, and I could focus on adjusting to my new role. But I definitely depend on her so much to similarly watch things and give me her opinion. After like our first year of working together, I started having her cut some scenes for me, and we've also co-edited a couple episodes together. And I just depend on her so much to be sort of that second pair of eyes and ears to catch little mistakes that might slip through the cracks. I think that it is kind of hard to let go of some of the things that I used to do, like VFX management. I feel like I still have my hands in a little too much, maybe. But it is just so, I mean, that the relationship between assistant editor and editor is so important, and it's so nice to have someone that, you know, has your back and is, you know, watching out for the show to go as smoothly as possible for you.
Absolutely. Erin, what's your experience with your assist?
My assist last season was Manny Shaw. He was also amazing, but I've also had a lot of help from Stacy and Romina, and I co-edited an episode with Julia and Romina, who were amazing. But I agree with what Lyson said about just learning to let go of the assist process and kind of delegating and not thinking about it. Sometimes it can be hard, but it's really great to have a wonderful assist who you can just trust and let them handle all the details. I was lucky to work with the same editor for 5 years, so that relationship that you build is priceless.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think also another thing important to note here, because with a lot of editors I've seen, it's the editor and the assist team that go from project to project. And I think once you build that relationship and that trust, right, you always want to work together. And I don't know that the people that are sort of up and coming and just starting here realize that once you find a good editor to work with, or once you find a good assistant to work with, you tend to always want to work with that team.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Very true.
Yeah. Then how is just moving on to something a little different now? How has This Is Us been different from other projects that you've worked on? And Julie, we can talk about, you know, you've got so many different shows you've done, even with unscripted. And one of the questions that popped up recently was about how to make the transition from unscripted to scripted. But I'd be curious to hear how This Is Us has been different from the other projects you've worked on, and the same from Erin and Lyson as well. But Julie, do you want to kick us off?
Sure. I mean, we said it while we were working on it, and I think now that we're 8 months or so out from finishing, it's just proven to be even more true. But we kind of knew we hit gold working on this show. It's like such a special show, story-wise, and, you know, the product we put out. But the, you know, Dan Fogelman was just like truly like the Jack Pearson of running the show, very collaborative. And we got to live in that world for 6 years. So it was really a family. I raised 2 kids, you know, or I have 2 small kids now. So it's just really such a special time in, I think, all our lives. But yeah, I mean, I saw that question pop up, and editorially, I think working in nonfiction is so helpful when you come into the fiction world. I always, you know, a lot of times producers kind of balk when you'd want to hire an assistant who only has reality experience or something. But I've always been like, they have way more trial by fire experience than someone who's maybe been only in the scripted world. Sure, someone in the scripted world knows kind of the network workflow standards, but someone in reality or doc or whatever, they've had to troubleshoot way more things, and they've had to work with a lot of different editors. And in terms of editing, you know, the ability to find a story in like the haystack totally translates when you're in the scripted world. I mean, we, like I said, the scripts were fantastic, but obviously when when it's in the edit, we're still kind of finding the story and making it the most cohesive. And so we're writing in the timeline. And so that was, I felt like I was drawing on that experience a lot. And then I think just from the actual practical side of moving over into scripted, it's just, you know, find a network, talk to some, you know, people through the pipeline of anyone who's in the scripted world, have coffee. And like I said, I got a call from a friend, was like, hey, there's a Shonda Rhimes show. And that was my entree into scripted, and it came out of nowhere. So just kind of planting those seeds, having lunch, coffees with people, keeping up, it never hurts. And you'll always be surprised when those seeds kind of come to fruition.
It's always about the networking, right?
Yep. I understand, because it's not my forte. You feel kind of weird to do it, but you know, there's a way to be very genuine about it. And you know, and obviously it's, you know, you want to keep a network of people that you like and that are good people. There's some people out there that maybe you'll just stay away from, but if have genuine connections with these people, you can find ways to like naturally kind of just like, hey, how's it going, you know, and that always usually pays off. You'll be in the back of their head when X job pops up, and they'll think of you. So
yeah, no, very, very good. And Aaron, same question to you with previous shows, and that how This Is Us has been different from previous projects that you've worked on.
Just the family dynamic, like there's a family on screen, but I feel like we were definitely a family in post. I feel like the actors and crew were all just a family, just generous. Like me going on to the next show with Milo, I just thought that was very cool that you would even think to bring me to another show. And also still working with Nick Pavinetti and Tim Barker, our APs. But the family dynamic and the collaboration, one thing that I genuinely loved about This Is Us was getting to work with Sid, our composer. So like getting the phone calls, really listening to him on the phone, playing the music, and having him like play the scene as he's like creating the music was just magical. And that's something that I appreciated in the moment, but I'm realizing as I go on, like that may never happen again. And that was just a really cool experience.
Yeah, you were doing music videos as well, you said before, right? On sort of your own projects and that. Did that sort of music background help with being able to, like the conversation you're just talking about with the composer?
Not as much probably what I was doing, because mine were just like for fun, like memory videos. But I do think emotion is something that I was always driven by. Like I always wanted to make people cry with the pictures and the music. So This Is Us was a dream job. It's exactly what I wanted to do. And so getting to kind of like, you know, tweak music or use the stems that Sid would spin and build something and have him make it like perfect was always amazing.
Right.
And to see it from beginning to end, like the scenes dry and then add the music and it pulled out a little bit more. You don't really have to do as much with like expository like lines. You don't have to spell it out for the viewers. And Sid is great at having the music come in after the emotion. He's not leading you to it. It's like it comes in after the emotion happens on screen.
Right. No, amazing. Yeah. And Lyson, send it over to you as well on this. How has it been different for you?
I definitely agree that the music aspect of it was a very special part, because on most shows, you know, you temp score with stuff from maybe other series, and then the composer just sort of comes in at the end and will write stuff that's similar to the temp. So that was the experience that I always had before. And then being able to work with Sid so closely on this show and really be part of the creation of the music and just how collaborative that was really cool and special. And the other aspect of the show that I think was really unique compared to other things I've worked on is because it is in all these different timelines. There's so much opportunity to restructure things and intercut things and really mold and shape the episode throughout the editing process. Whereas in other shows, it's kind of like, you know, the story is linear, so it has to happen the way it happens. So that aspect of This Is Us was added additional challenges, but it was also really exciting to be able to have such an impact on the story.
No, and then you touched on something else earlier as well when we were talking about sort of the assisting roles and things, how you work with them and things that you don't let go of. VFX you mentioned, right, was one of those things. I'm curious here too, from all of you, what are some of your go-to tools inside of Media Composer? Is there anything that you find yourself going to more often than not? It could be, you know, something as simple as transitions, but animats, fluid morphs. Because I'm just really curious to get that from you all.
A ton of animats. Our VFX coordinator would always say that my episodes had the most split screens in them because I would always be trying to, you know, perfect a performance, but still keep continuity. So I did that a lot. And in the last season, I finally realized the magic of fluid morph and started using that a lot more too. And it was so helpful.
No, very cool. Erin, how about you?
Animat and fluid morph were definitely my go-tos to take time out. The fluid morphs, if I could find like a facial expression that matched and take a few frames out, and same with the split screens. I don't think I used as many as I thought, but definitely loved being able to like use part of a shot and another character doing something different that I needed them to do timing wise.
Yeah, and watching, I think the episodes, I would never know how much is in there, which is the beauty of the effect, right? But that's, yeah, I never thought that there were so many in there. So I'm impressed that you put so many things together there.
Thank you.
Julia, what are your go-tos?
Yeah, I think our show, you guys would be shocked at how many VFX we actually had. But yeah, definitely Animat. I think Romina, my assistant, turned me on to this. Was just the muting clips. As you know, like you said, it's a lot of montage building. It's getting the sense of things and the feel. And especially like, you know, when I was in film school, I was probably the last gen of like getting to cut on Steenbecks and on actual film. So the ability to be able to just like mute a clip and then, or unmute it and try it again, move it around on the timeline is so helpful. And I think it makes for montage building. And, you know, like Lyson said, we're constantly moving these lit timeline segments around. And I found that to be really helpful.
Yep. No, very cool. Yeah, and then on the, I guess, similar topic to that with knowing this, some things that pop up here are if there's any sort of upskills to do in the, you know, to sharpen the editing skills, get more in tune with the application. What do you do in your spare time to sort of sharpen your skills, if you will? And Lyson, we can start off with you.
I think this is not really a technical Avid thing, but one of the most important parts of editing is the music aspect of it. And so I'm always trying to just listen to a lot of different kinds of music and scores from TV shows and movies and just sort of expand my palette so that when you're editing something, you have a good foundation to pull from. And as far as like practicing editing, just, you know, cutting as much as you can wherever you can, because I remember when I was an assistant editor, I would cut scenes for Susan, and the longer we worked together, I would kind of cut more and more. But once I became an editor and was cutting all the scenes in the episode very suddenly, I was amazed at how I felt like I progressed so quickly, just from cutting that much more. So, the more you do it, just the better you get.
Very true. Yeah, Julia?
Yeah, I think ditto to what Lyson and said on both counts, listening, just expanding that music palette, and cutting. I mean, I'd say personally right now, I'm not doing a lot of that in my off time because I'm raising a small child, but yeah, I mean, I think cutting a lot of shorts, I think would be such a helpful tool for someone trying to make that leap, because you're getting to really focus on like a story, like a short contained story, and how to tell that the most efficiently as possible. And I think that if I can look at my like overarching experience over the 6 years on This Is Us, I think it was like getting to work on such a top notch, high caliber show, and having the opportunity to really kind of hone my literally editing skills. Like, what do I need? What don't I need to tell this story? The actor is giving you a lot here. I'm going to step back. And I know for me as especially when I was a newer editor, I'm kind of like, I have all this footage, I'm going to use it all. And so then it's like about paring back. And I think, so the more you're cutting on the side, music videos, docs, short films, like the more you just have that world experience to work on honing that.
No, it's good. And Aaron, I'm sure you're going to have a ditto to this as well, but it's curious to hear your take on it.
Ditto to Julia. I definitely say that the more you cut, the more you learn. Just cutting things on the side as you're assisting, because you have access to the Avid, so after hours, but like learning from work and applying it to something else and having to do it all on your own, because usually when you're working on a short, you're having to assist and edit and turn it over and do the online. So like really managing your time and perfecting that little project, so that you can go on to bigger, longer features.
Right.
Another thing that I just thought of is, as much as you can have access to editors that or if you can shadow people, just learning tips from as many people as you can, because every editor has their own tricks. And like, I've picked up things here and there from all the editors that I've known that are, it's just helpful to have as much in your arsenal as you can.
Yeah, it's a great point. One of the questions that came up as well were about any networking platforms that you can recommend. I personally, off the top of my head, can't think of any, but definitely curious to know if there were any forums, any sort of just websites that you went to specifically for editing, production, post-production that you'd recommend, besides Avid community forums, of course.
I'm a member of ACE, and I had the opportunity, I know Aaron as well, to be in this program they started called the Diversity Mentorship Program. So every year, that's kind of like, maybe, I don't know how many now, but maybe 50 people who want to edit at all kind of stages in their career. And so you're doing this kind of like top-down mentoring. So like a PA and a couple assistants, a couple editors, a couple senior editors. And that was so helpful. That was the first time I really felt like I had a network of any editors. Like it's like, you don't know what you're missing till you see, like, you walk into a room with all these editors. You're like, oh my God, this is amazing. People are doing what I'm doing. And that's honestly how I've kind of grown my network from there. And I don't know if, I think a lot of the listeners, or maybe most, are in Britain. So I don't know if there's something similar to reach out to, and maybe they have some sort of mentorship program or mixers or things like that.
No, it's great to know. And it's something that we'll be sure to get more info from that and help people find it if they reach out to us. So Aaron or Lyson, anything that you recommend or that you've gone to?
I would say like I Googled all the editors that I was really a fan of. So Susan Bale being one. She was like one of my favorite editors because Grey's Anatomy was my favorite. And so I Googled and found podcasts where she would talk about editing. Kelly Dixon, same way. So just listening to them and listening to how they approach things was very helpful. And just searching their name came up with podcasts. I believe there was like a Making the Cut podcast out there that interviews several different editors on their craft and how they approach scenes.
Okay, no, very cool to know. Yeah, how about you, Lyson?
I also definitely think ACE is a great resource. They have an internship program also that I applied for when I was first coming out here that I didn't end up getting, but even if you just apply, you get access to a lot of their resources, and they have a panel that they do once a year that a lot of amazing editors are at. And then I think also sort of similar to what Aaron was saying, just reaching out to people that you admire. I know that I've had a few people just kind of reach out to me on LinkedIn or through my alumni network. And it's always nice to hear that somebody is a fan of your work, and I'm always happy to chat with them. So I think a lot of editors really want to help and would be happy to talk to young people.
Yeah, that's great. Your LinkedIn inbox is about to fill up right after this, but yeah, again, it's important to point out to everyone here that it is a very good collaborative community. People really do like to talk about work and talk shop, and everyone's really open to that. So I'm glad to hear that all of you are the same with that. And I think we're sort of coming up close to the hour. One topic that I wanted to make sure that we spoke about as well is just probably one of the more important things, given the way things have been going with the pandemic, the way that work changed, everything else, working alone versus with a team and group of people. How are you all handling, or what advice do you have to sort of just not go crazy in this industry, right? The sort of mental health aspect of things, the just keeping calm and keep enjoying what you're doing without losing it, if you will. And I'll open it up to any of you that want to start off there.
I feel disingenuous listing off things I should be doing because I'm not raising kiddos, and we're recovering from our first bout with COVID. So, but meditation. I used to be much more involved with that, going to like a sangha every Sunday. Meditation, exercise. I found when I could, especially pre-pandemic, going to exercise in the morning before work. At least you're starting your day, on your terms, and then who knows how late you'll be working, but at least you've kind of cross that off your list, and you have the endorphins to get you through the day. So those are all things that I should be doing that I'm not right now. And then I was thinking about that question a little more this morning, and I thought, there's that element, but I think also in terms of the work, like I think we're all going to end up on shows maybe we don't love, or we don't get along with the crew or the post team, and they're not the most cohesive the way our team was. But I think a way to kind of preserve the mental health is like seeking out those shows that do offer that community. I think like, sure, we're all going to land on a couple duds, but maybe just kind of clocking like, okay, those are not healthy people to work for and work with. And, I will not be doing that down the line. So, I understand, like, when you're starting out, you're kind of not, choosy about what kind of jobs you take, but it's just something that over time, you realize life is short, and, we work long hours. And so to work long hours with people that don't respect your time is just not worth it. So.
Yeah, very, very good point. Recognizing the situation you're in and having a way out of it. Very important. Definitely. Yeah. Aaron, how about you?
Julia, and I can list a bunch of stuff that I should be doing. But trying to even just get out of the house and take a walk is
Yeah.
useful. Like I remember there's days where you're just like in the house, especially since you're not leaving, your work is at home, your life is at home. Sometimes you just won't leave the house. So just trying to take a walk or like catching up with, other friends, or I, found it useful just get out, sit outside and eat or something, or like actually take a full lunch break. When you're in the office, people know you're taking a lunch break. I feel like it's a little harder at home because no one knows you're taking a break. So trying to like define a moment where I'm like, no, I'm gonna take a lunch break, or I'm gonna actually like change into jeans as opposed to yoga pants today. Like those things are all positive mental health things for me.
Yeah, very good. Yeah, and Lyson?
Yeah, I think those are all really great points. I definitely struggle a lot with the taking of breaks, and working at home. It's just so easy to just sit down and then like never stand up all day. But I'm working on it, and the times that I do, take a stretching break or go around the block for a walk or take a real lunch break, whenever I come back, I'm always so much more creative, and I can kind of pick up on things that I wasn't seeing before. So even though it feels like, oh, I can't afford the time to take a break, it ends up being a net positive almost always when I do. So
Yeah, absolutely. It's probably the most important thing is to make time for ourselves, right? So, yeah.
And I can think of so many
And I
times.
think we're
Oh, sorry. No, go ahead. I was just gonna
no,
say
go ahead, Julia.
cracked an editing nut, like in the shower or walking or making food. So definitely, to Lyson's point, take a break when you can.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's most important. I know some of the best ideas are had in the showers, right? So, yeah, and the coming up on the hour, but a question that just popped up here that is interesting. I'd be curious to hear from each of you in the last few minutes, but what was each of your most difficult episode to edit, and what about it made it difficult?
Oof. I saw that pop up, so I was already starting to rack my brain. I'm sure there's so many, but like off the top of my head, two popped into my mind. I hope I can use two since I did 6 seasons. But
Yeah.
one was the first one that popped up was the car. I think it was episode 215. It was the one right after. I hope everyone has watched the show. Jack dies. So it was after the big Super Bowl episode, which I know, Robert, you had a big hand in. And it was just for a lot of reasons. So many logistical eyes were on the Super Bowl episode, the big fire episode where Jack dies, that there weren't that many eyes on the next episode coming up. And so our schedule was very tight. We had a lot of on location scenes. They had a snow machine, we had a lot of sound issues. So there was a lot of like editorial heavy lifting that needed to be done. I think we played around with story, in the edit. And so that one that took a lot of TLC on a short timeline. But feel really proud about the way that episode turned out. And it's, the ode to the Wagoneer that the family had throughout the years. So and then the next one popped into my mind, and Aaron edited with me on this, was what was it called? It was 508
In the room.
In the room. So it's the one where all the babies are born. And so of course our show chose a pandemic year to like have all these babies be born in the show. And this is an episode where a lot of the characters are giving birth in a hospital. Obviously, our show actually included the pandemic in our show, so family members weren't able to be together, and so they were actually FaceTiming each other and showing off their babes, and so that was all kind of shot practically. They because of COVID, they had to use dolls to get when they did principal photography. And then I kind of got the honorary job of being baby unit supervisor, so I actually got to like COVID test myself and go into set, and we had, you know, a slew of episodes that literally were almost picture locked, and we were like, we need these shots of these babies in this way, and so I got to kind of like mini direct the baby unit. And you know, once the baby, it's crazy, like once the parent you know, walks off set, they only have 15 minutes to shoot with the baby before they can, you know, have to be really take their baby break. So it was, yeah, very stressful, but kind of a really cool experience as an editor, because I feel like we're constantly getting inserts where you don't have control from, and we're just like, oh, the continuity's not right, the hand's not in the same place. And this time I literally had an iPad and I was like, no, look at the hand, it needs to match here. And so I felt like God going to set and get exactly what we needed. So that was just like, logistically, that was a lot. And Aaron and Romina and I edited that one. And it just felt like so special as well, because we were all FaceTiming with our loved ones, you know, in real life. And so, yeah, that one felt like a real like translation of our like current experience onto the screen.
Yeah, very cool story. I'm picturing God with an iPad now too. Just yeah. So Aaron, tell us about your episode.
I would say my toughest episode was probably 513, Brotherly Love. It was my first solo episode. And it was tying up the Kevin Randall fight. So just the first episode of This Is Us, a show I love, like fully getting my own episode. The directors, this was her first directing, second episode that she directed on This Is Us, but like I cut her shorts before. She's writer, executive producer, K.O. Hagan. So that was just like, want to make everybody happy. I want to make Dan happy, make Kay happy, and do a good job. So that was probably the most stressful episode.
Yeah, cool. Lyson?
Mine is easy. It was 617, the train, for a lot of reasons. I mean, one, it was the second to last episode of the series, and it was a huge episode, so there was just a lot of pressure on it. And this was also during the pandemic, so we were working from home. For this episode and also the finale, which Julia cut, Dan actually had an Avid set up in his house. So I was over there working with him for several days. And every little thing was just kind of was under a microscope because it was such an important episode. And we had several different test screenings. And kind of late in the process, some of the writers realized that structurally there were some big problems. So I ended up having to just really recut and change a lot of things close to our deadlines. And it was high stress, but it was definitely also the most I've felt fulfilled on an episode, and I was just so proud of how it turned out. So, and the other crazy thing was it was all on a green screen train. So we had like several hundred VFX shots to get done in a very small amount of time. So that was just another layer of difficulty on that one.
Yeah, it all adds up. Yeah, no, all amazing stories. And I thank you guys all very much. With the last thing here, I want to give you an opportunity each, any closing thoughts, statements, things that you each want to say before we wrap up the session. From Julia, we can start off with you if there's anything.
Yeah, I mean, just thanks for listening and watching, and yeah, finding your friends, your community, your extended network of editors, of movie, TV lovers, and I think it's what fuels us and keeps us going, and not makes us, especially with the pandemic, makes us feel like we're not doing this in a vacuum, which let's be honest, we are sometimes. So yeah, I think just keep cutting and reaching out.
Awesome. Aaron?
I agree. And I would just say, like, once you find the person that's great and you can learn from, just keep adding to that as, like, a resource. I feel like Lysan and I both started on season 2. And we both came up together, and she's definitely a resource that I use as far as, like, how does this look? And, like, always speaking and being a student, and just, like, I feel like I'm always a student. I'm always learning from every other editor I work with on the show. So you're never finished learning. You're always going to pick something new up.
Yep. Awesome. Very true. Lysan?
I think I would say just take every opportunity that you can to, edit and, just that I know there were a lot of opportunities that I was scared of early in my career that maybe I didn't feel like I was quite ready for. And so to just jump in with both feet and have confidence and do your best. And if you're working with good people, it'll all work out.
Very true. Well, a little past the hour over here, but I definitely want to take just a quick moment to thank you all, congratulate you all on a fantastic show, not only, but also on your individual success. I wish you all the best in the future, and I could talk to you for another 2 hours, but someone will cut me off eventually. And I look forward to having more conversations with you in the future about other topics, but you all have incredible careers, and we definitely, I can speak for the audience from what I've been seeing here. Everyone loved this, and we hope to see more of you very soon. So thank you all. Thank you everyone here for joining us on Avid's Inside Track, and we will see you all again very soon.
Thank you.